Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Monday, November 16th. So, first day of the week, and again, pretty much action-packed markets, right? I mean, we've had basically something pretty decently going on, at least once a week. Today, some really good news, I think, just for everybody, right? Globally, great to see the Moderna vaccine news come in and, with a really high rate of efficacy. So that's great news, for everybody. Of course, that would be, I think, all in all today, that's the best news of the day, right? Of course, we'll talk about the markets here and so forth, but in terms of the price action, right, which is what we talk about, gap up today, but a little bit less severe than what we saw last Monday. Really some things went nuts last Monday. Russell futures were, remember, like last Monday, were limit up in the morning. They didn't go that far, which is good. That was a little bit too extreme, I thought, but they did finish up. IWM did lead the way again, up 2.3%. SPYs finished up 1.2%. The Qs also, finished just a little bit under 1%, but they did rally a little bit, especially towards the end of the day. There was a decent buy imbalance, which kind of caused things to rally there at the end of the day. So, and also interesting price action from the VIX too. At one point, the VIX was up around 24, and this basically slid down in the last hour of trading. All the way down. So like I said, some crazy action like in the last hour to close below 23. So you kind of had to stay with it today because, it was a little bit dull price action for for most of the session. Again, gap up days are really tough to kind of come in and think that you're going to day trade successfully. They're one of those things where if you gap up, you really, in my opinion, don't want to chase too much. You could do a couple small trades to keep yourself a little bit active, but overall for me, like, I try not to really trade much on the when we see a decent gap up, regardless of what it is that caused it. So yeah, here's the VIX. We'll go through the the averages now are going to be a little bit easier to analyze. So why is that? Why are the indices a little bit easier to analyze right now? Well, because there's no resistance, right? So, when we're battling with, a previous area that the market has been in, we talk about overhead resistance, and we talk about how, having to get through some resistance, and, if there's a virgin point of control, you'll hear me talk about those. But right now, the S&P is breaking out, right? And that makes it a lot easier to to analyze things. I mentioned a couple things, in terms of, what we've been hearing over the last week, things that in my analysis, I refer to as under the hood. Those things, when we hear about, oh, sentiment's really hot, there's been a lot of fund flows, there's, all of these things are what I refer to as like pieces of the puzzle and are important, but really price and trend are most important. I mean, it's really difficult for the markets to break out to new all-time highs and for sentiment to be low, right? I mean, they kind of go a little bit hand in hand. So keep that in mind, right? It's funny that when we do see like some really nice price action, everybody starts to say, oh, this is bad, it's a warning sign, sentiment is super hot. The put-call ratio and so forth. Yes, so you do want to be mindful of when things are hot, and if you're an active trader, you can definitely do more of selling the rip and buying the dip. But if you're a medium-term, longer-term investor, this is great stuff for you, right? This is nice to see a breakout. IWM as well, right? IWM is now cooking. Remember how long too? The other thing that just to kind of put things a little bit in perspective too, is to remember how long like IWM wasn't really doing much, right? It would rally a little bit, then it would stall. It was very frustrating. So now you got a breakout, and the only complaint I would say is that it's very fast, right? It's very fast to get your arms around some of these price moves, but There it is. Another closing high. Don't forget, we closed all the way over here. We hit an intraday high, but we've now taken that out. So it's also like good to realize too, when you have these really nasty looking candles like this. One name that comes to mind, which I won't go too far off the page here, but Restoration Hardware was one of those names too that I traded last week. Had a crazy looking candle on Thursday, but notice it didn't lose any of the trend. So it was flat for today. It tried to rally again, but as long as this thing is still kind of going with the trajectory higher, it really doesn't matter all that much that a candle, a candlestick first of all, a candlestick pattern is 3 candles. So one candle can look pretty ugly, but as long as price kind of backs and fills and stays with the overall trend, which is prevailing higher, then you can kind of try to ignore some of these things, and hopefully, on these big rips and so forth, you could take some profits. But yeah, all in all, there's no technical damage when that occurs. As long as you don't, as long as you don't, break below and make like an evening star or something like that type of pattern. The Qs, by the way, still have not made a new high yet, so they're actually, while leading most of the year, they are lagging here the last couple months just a bit. Again, not all that bad though. All right, and then looking at some of the groups of stocks today. A lot of the material energy, I was looking for things. I had set a number of alerts on, some things that I was either kind of, looking to buy the dip on a little bit, and really just a lot of things didn't trigger for me. So I just really didn't trade that much today overall. I wasn't really heavily positioned in energy stocks or value stocks either. I can tell you when I was doing my weekend analysis. So, what we do at Tribeca Trade Group is we put together weekend videos and a watch list for the upcoming week. And one of the things that I found, the conclusions that I made was that I was just seeing a lot of good setups in a lot of industrial names, a lot of material names, and then a few different other areas too, but not so much in tech, right? Not so much in tech and not so much in growth. And by the way, that's not the end of the story. I think in these stocks, they're just probably going to rest a little bit. Remember that it's a little bit of like a seesaw type pattern, or I call it like push and pull a little bit. When the value stocks become cheap and there's a reason to buy the value stocks, as there is for some of them, for the opening stocks, then those will get bought. People will take some profits in some of those names that have been very hot so far this year. But the good point there is that they do become a little bit cheaper, and they become a little bit more attractive. So usually we do see, and what we've seen this year is when the value stocks do rotate and the growth stocks sell off a little bit, we do see money start to kind of come back in there. So I don't know if that's fully going to happen, but I think to some extent, instead of grouping, again, I hate the whole grouping of value versus growth, but it's an easy way to kind of describe it. I still think quality, I want to own quality, not so much value or growth, but I would rather go after names that could see a boost, right, that have been depressed a little bit, and that are rallying a little bit. So, the other thing that with these gaps ups, which I've talked a lot about that, and I put some thoughts on Twitter on Sunday night just about the gap ups. It's tough to, it is a tough thing to be in this market all the time. The way that I tackle it, and this is the system that I have, is that I have 3 different ways to kind of tackle this problem of saying, hey, well, I want to be active, but I also want to be in there for the majority of the moves. So the majority of the moves are the one in the middle, right? So this is my TTG trend portfolio. I rebalanced that slightly on Friday. But really, I'm staying in the market, right? So I'm staying in there for both, for the move in the after hours, for the move in the day. That's my way to have exposure to the market. Trading account, of course, I'm going to be doing, mostly swing trading there and a little bit of day trading, and that I'm going to be more tactical, right? With how using my capital and so on and so forth. It's a faster trading philosophy for that. And then I have something new, which has kind of worked pretty well, which is the weekly the Tribeca Trade Group weekly watch list program. So every weekend I put together this list. This was the timing was a little bit off. What can I say? Because the names that I put together here, did very well, up 2.3%. So again, I didn't know that the vaccine news was going to come out Monday morning, but I did see more opportunities in things like Boeing and things like Brinker, which was up 7%. And then I had three different material industrial type names, DuPont, Deere, and they all finished up pretty nicely. DuPont, Deere, and where's the third one on here? Dow, right? They all finished up, close to 3%. Dow is the winner out of this group. But yeah, I mean, so kind of look at a couple of these things just to see how they did. Remember, of course, if you're analyzing things during the day, and especially with the gap ups, it's difficult. You always want to make sure that you're looking at the closing print. But DuPont had a nice move. Dow, I mean, these charts look very similar, and then Deere, which I thought was the strongest out of them, but really nice moves out of these. So what I do with these names, and Ford did pretty well today too. AXP, of course, that was the name that I talked about on Bloomberg on Friday. That was up 3.2%. So all in all, pretty good. And again, I did have a couple tech names in here. The Trade Desk, which was up 1.5% today. Net is also in here somewhere, up 1.2% today. So a little bit lagging overall, but geez, what a move for Boeing, up 8%. But yes, what I do for these names is, unfortunately, like, I didn't really, if I had to choose, didn't want to buy these names on the open. But I think they actually did. Many of them did pretty good from the opening, such as Boeing, right? And what I'm doing too, just so that I maintain exposure. We'll go back to this, right? Is on Friday, right? So I hold this watch list for a week, and then what I do is on Friday I substitute. Oh, sorry, it should be on the bottom here. I make sure that I rotate into SPY. And then I hold the SPY over the weekend, and I sell the SPY on the open, right? So that's been helping with the Monday gap ups. But overall, even like before the last couple of weeks, like we've been experiencing these Sunday night into Monday morning rallies. So that's how I'm covering it, right? And I wasn't overly exposed in my trading account with energy and a bunch of material names and so forth. I kind of came into this week a little bit light, and that's fine because I'm kind of picking up with the exposure in these two areas. So that's the way I'm handling this type of market. And who knows if it continues, right? I think it's been a little bit more, right? I've talked about before how the majority of the moves happen in the after hours market. It seems a little bit more extreme lately, right? And we're getting a lot more chop, I think, than average. But that's the way I'm tackling it, right? You got to have a game plan for how to basically take advantage of what the market is giving you, right? If you're a set day trader, you could do that. These are things that you can kind of do to get that exposure where the market is giving you the majority of the money right now, right? And again, this is could change, but for right now, that's what it is. I had somebody who asked me on Twitter, like, I went over this concept. I go over this concept a lot, but they said, okay, well, how do you spot the best day trading setups? And I'm like, that's another conversation, but right now you're not getting those. So it's funny that like sometimes it goes in one ear and out the other with people who just want to day trade. So again, I think there's opportunity there are some opportunities for that, but right now they're I don't want to say few and far between, but in the overall grand scheme of things, it's a lot easier doing these two things right now than it is trying to time the market, unless and I would add that adding some things at the end of the day has worked pretty well. Today, I don't know, right? I mean, today, for example, we've already made a nice move, so you have to be a little bit conservative after you've gotten some decent big moves, and you kind of wait a little bit, and see how that goes a bit. So you don't, again, it's making adjustments in trading. You don't always want to have the accelerator all the way down, especially when you're given, when the market gives you some really nice price action. But I'll go into my trades. Again, not much. I traded some FTX. This was a name on the watch list. So as I've said before, the names that we put together for the weekend watch list, they serve two purposes. One, for this program, the weekly watch list, where I'm buying all those names on the open on Monday, holding them through the week. And then number two, I am looking for some setups. And I just decided to trade this one as a day trade for the option. And I bought a little bit of stock, but really not much. Right? That's how I've been kind of rolling some positions. Remember, options are going to be a bit more volatile, a lot more volatile. But, I think this can move up to 292, which is top of value. So I'm holding stock for that position. Again, little things to kind of trick yourself, to kind of help you stay in a trade. Fuel cell, I talked about this one in the over the weekend. Nice move here. Oh, look at that. It took out a VPOC. I did not see that. I didn't see that there was one there on the daily. Ruh-roh. Is there one there? I have to wait for the charts to adjust here. What's wrong with this value area? This doesn't look right. Let's go back. Let's use a daily chart. That's going to be the 20-year. This value area doesn't, there's something not right with this. So anyway, I'll show you what I was looking at on the weekly chart. So on the weekly chart, what you'll see is a break of value, which I do like this. So again, whenever we're looking at the weekly chart, it's a Monday, so the week has to complete. But as long as it stays above 336, you might have a nice breakout in this stock, and then you can use this as your stop. All right, so that's one trade that I did, and then we started to see some interesting things. At the end of the day, I was looking at AMD throughout the session. That was a name that we saw some call activity too early on in the day. It's a little bit of a tougher chart right now. I'm guessing that they're doing some positioning with NVIDIA reporting later this week, which we often see that, right? We often see calls go up in a name that has its competitor reporting earnings for that week. But for me, I've got a little bit of a signal here on the 1 hour chart, right? We did get above value, right? So 83.32. Remember, what I'm looking for a lot of times is just a move out of consolidation, right? I don't want to be buying it stretched out of a consolidation zone, but once it starts to break higher, right? So this just gave the closing bar at 4 o'clock, or excuse me, at 3 o'clock, and then at 4 o'clock. So this way I know, right, that I'm playing for a break higher short term, and I know where the trade's not going to work. 83.30. All right, so that's AMD. And then really interesting, we saw a lot of team calls go up. So again, I don't really like to add a lot of, so I kind of tricked myself a little bit, being that I didn't really want to add risk on such a strong day. What I do is I just take a couple like small partial positions, right, and make sure that I am selling some things, right? So that's important. to make sure that I don't want to be adding risk, in my opinion, to big, strong days like this. I want to be a net seller, but I could still kind of position in some things that really haven't participated that I think might be an interesting trade. Here was the calls that went up. I think there was about weekly calls, right? Not this particular trade, not these spread crosses, but at the end of the day, we saw these November 190s trade, right, over and over and over, like in the last 20 minutes of the day. So kind of interesting. Team has been a name that was not super strong on earnings, but maybe this is a dip buyer in here. Again, whenever I'm trading short-term options, and I didn't trade the weeklies, I gave myself a little bit more time. And I don't mind spending a little bit more buying myself some time. But again, whenever you're trading something like this short term, my view of it is that it's kind of an all or nothing type trade, right? So you have to size these appropriately, so that if you get an adverse effect, team gets downgraded or something like that tomorrow, you're only putting in what you're willing to risk. That's my methodology. Anything for short-term calls like this, that's how I do it. All right. So that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Went over a couple concepts and how I'm kind of trying to position in this market, and it helps me to kind of separate my strategy into a couple different ways. And of course, I didn't mention this in the beginning, but everything that we're going through here is for information purposes only, and not giving out any advice or recommendations. All right, guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.